Hey team, this is Brian Daniel with the Celebrity Personal Assistant Network Staffing Agency, which is located online at findcelebrityjobs.com. So this is the final video in this presentation of the PA course, which teaches you how to get jobs with celebrities and billionaires. So let's get right into it. So part 3 of the PPT, Surviving the Job. Be warned, working with celebrities and billionaires can be vicious. There's a lot of backbiting, backstabbing, and betrayals. It's not always like that, but you need to have thick skin. And here's a picture of Arnold Schwarzenegger with his entourage. So the way I like to describe some of these jobs with celebrities and billionaires, it's kind of like the TV show Survivor, where you have all these conspiracies and alliances and secret meetings, and everyone is always vying for the VIP's attention, right? And this is just the nature of the game. I also tell people to watch the Whitney Houston movie, The Bodyguard, because in that movie they do a very good job of illustrating the the dangers of working with celebrities, with all the drama that's going on behind the scenes and the posturing and the backbiting and everything. So anyway, be aware of it. And there's some more resources here. So if you have the PPT, just click here. Otherwise, the link will be in the description of the video. Reality and expectations. The job isn't what you would expect. Remember, this is a business, and the celebrities and billionaires are quite often different than their public personas. Don't be starstruck, and remember that it's a job, not a vacation. Keep a level head and keep your feet on the ground. So, in nearly every case, with people that I've worked for, and then of course I've collaborated with a lot of celebrity assistants in the business over the years, there's one thing we can really agree on, and that's the people are going to be quite different in real life. Okay, you need to know that. And most often, you're not going to be pleasantly surprised by the differences. Okay, so PR teams are carefully crafting the personas of the people, and the publicity you see in interviews and magazines, it's very carefully crafted. Anyway, there's more information here in the link. It says learn the A to Z of the business with billionaires. Hiring the neighbor's niece. I've coined this phrase many years ago. A great many people in this industry got the job by accident. So I say the neighbor's niece because literally that's what happened. Someone hired the neighbor's niece or the business manager's nephew, or it's a friend of a friend. So that accident of getting hired could be you or someone else that you're dealing with. Always be humble and respectful. Don't let things go to your head, because it can end just as fast as it began. Lesson: if you get lucky, appreciate it and know that it can end at any time. So let me tell you this. If you remember anything, remember this. It's going to end. These jobs always do. You could be going to work, you're hitting home runs every day, your boss showers you with gratitude and you're amazing and you always go the extra mile, and then bam, suddenly out of nowhere, and they don't even tell you in person, you get a text, hey man, thanks for all your help, we're done. And that's how it works. And sometimes you'll get that message straight from the celebrity, or from oftentimes from someone else. They just completely cut you off. They block the number. We don't need you anymore, and it's over. And you'll never, half the time, even know the reason why. Bonus: if you got lucky and scored a job, then you should dive into the nuances of the industry and learn everything you can. Handling moral dilemmas: at some point, you will be asked to cross a line. Even the most ethical of employers, and there aren't that many that are purely ethical, at some point, you're going to come to a crossroads. You're going to be asked to do something that you're not completely comfortable with. It's inevitable. If you work for a celebrity, high net worth individual, or a billionaire, at some point you will be asked to do something that you are uncomfortable with. You need to nip it in the bud, or it will open the floodgates. It's like feeding a cat, right? And they come back. Honestly, the best example that I could possibly give is Matthew Perry's assistant. He's going to prison. So right now, as I'm making this video, it's April 27th, 2026. Just days ago, the ketamine queen who supplied Matthew Perry with the drugs got 15 years. And Matthew Perry's assistant could also be facing 15 years. He should have just told his boss no, right? So if you're confronted with something, it may not be as serious as drugs or anything like that, but if you're confronted with something that you're not comfortable with, it's just better to say, hey, boss, you know what? I'm not comfortable. Now, that could mean that you lose your job, and so be it, right? Because in another context, let's say that you were an accountant and you worked at an accounting firm and you were a CPA, and someone said, hey, Bob, sign this document, and you're forging a client's signature. Would you do that? No, of course you wouldn't. It's against the law and you could go to prison. So it doesn't matter what job you're in, not just celebrity jobs. All jobs at some point, you're going to be asked to do something that you're not comfortable with, and you have to say no. There's a polite way to do it. You say, you know what, guys, I'm really sorry. I'm going to have to think about that. You know, this isn't kosher, right? You say it any way that you want, but you have to just stop it before it starts because it will grow. Understanding rage: celebrities and billionaires are rarely told no. Behind the scenes, some ultra high net worth individuals have bad tempers. If you work for someone with an explosive temper, it's important to know that have backup suggestions ready is important. So if you're going to tell your boss no about something, whatever it is, you couldn't get it done, was it possible because the request was wildly unrealistic, have some suggestions. Hey, we couldn't do this, but I have this, and this that we could do, right? Don't just show up empty-handed and not have a solution. It's important to remain composed and know how to handle your boss. Not all people have explosive behavior, but you got to remember we live in this instant gratification society, and just the average person can become very frustrated if they don't get what they want. Now you just amplify that in the world of celebrities and billionaires, right? I was coaching someone very recently who has a boss who's extremely explosive. In fact, it's abusive, right? And I just told her, you know what? Get out of that situation. It's not easy because you need income, right? There are no clear-cut solutions to these situations. Holding your boss accountable. Rich people want what they want when they want it. This is a very common expression in our industry. The lofty requests often come last minute and on a tight budget. So even if they can afford to do some wild requests, they're often like, just going back to the lady I just was talking about with the explosive boss. He was throwing a private party, and we saw the catering bill was like $30,000, and that was the discounted price. So he was getting explosive. He's angry. No, I want it for even less. I mean, the guy's a billionaire. He's got the money. And in fact, she was in a very bad situation because then he put the catering, he gave that responsibility to another assistant who literally took $2,000 out of her own pocket and reduced the cost of the bill. And she lied to the boss, said, "Oh, I got another $2,000 off," because she wanted to look like a hero. So she stabbed her coworker in the back. And this is the kind of vicious nonsense that you can be dealing with sometimes. The eccentric requests often come with cancellation fees, and VIPs don't like losing money. Always cover your butt, right? Put things in writing, keep your texts and the emails. So if you say, "Hey boss, we can have the 3 Ferraris in Paris at the Ritz-Carlton as you requested, but if I go ahead and book this and confirm it, we're going to lose X amount of dollars if we cancel." Always have that in writing, so they can't say that they weren't told, or maybe even threaten to take it out of your paycheck. Make sure you CYA, cover your right, and make sure your boss knows how much it will cost to unwind something they requested. You can learn more by following the link here. Communicating effectively. When you work for VIPs, it's important to have clear communication. How and how often you communicate should be established. Whatever ground rules you set can be modified as you get to know each other, but you don't want to be blamed for something that's not your fault. Another fun phrase that I kind of coined is that when things go right, someone else takes the credit. When things go wrong, you take the blame, even when it's not your fault. So that's what happens in the world of being an assistant. But in any case, some bosses don't want to know much, and you work very autonomously and you don't have to communicate with them. And some bosses are kind of obsessive about details and they want to know every little thing. Everyone's different, but whatever it is, establish it at the beginning of your job and then be flexible. Setting boundaries. It's important to draw a line, otherwise you open a can of worms. If you don't want to get calls at 3 a.m. from your boss asking you to make a milkshake, then you better set some ground rules. By the way, this is true. This is not some crazy outlandish thing that I made up for entertainment value. I was speaking to an assistant years ago who worked for a billionaire, and he was very eccentric. And he called her at 3 o'clock in the morning, and she lived about 20 or 30 minutes away, I recall. And he said, "Come to my house and make me a milkshake." He was some wild, crazy guy, and he was up all night. He was like nocturnal. And he was just asserting his power and authority over her and making her get up out of bed. And so anyway, you got to set boundaries. This is why it's very important in the beginning when you're doing an interview. You can't, they're not going to put everything in the job description, and it's not possible or realistic to do that. But you want to be as clear as you can during the interview process, which could be, 3, 4, 5, 6 interviews. So at the very last interview, you can say, "Hey, Mr. X, I'd like to give us this one. Thank you very much for having confidence in me and offering me the job, blah, blah, blah. Is there anything else that we should discuss that could be considered a surprise?" Now, it is a very difficult situation to be in, to speak this way to a celebrity or a billionaire. And most newbies do not have the confidence to do that. But when you've been in the game a long time, because I've represented some really seasoned professionals, 5, 10, 20, 30 years of experience that have worked for many, many, many VIPs. And so they've been in many precarious situations. And they have the confidence. They can usually smell it and read between the lines during the interview process if something's going to go wrong. But they are going to have that conversation at the very end, because when it starts happening and you're neck deep in something, you don't want to be dealing with those kinds of situations when it's too late, especially if you're overseas and far away from home, and you could become stranded. You can read more by clicking the link here. Contingency planning. You need backup plans for surprises. The rich and famous change their mind every time the wind blows. They're very whimsical. You always need backup plans with contingencies built in, so you don't want to get caught with your pants down and fail. Inevitably, what will happen is the longer you work for somebody, you'll become like clairvoyant, and you can read their mind, and you know their patterns, and you can get in front of problems, right? In the very beginning, it's hard to be ready for these surprises because you don't fully understand how your boss thinks yet, but contingency planning is very important. You're always asking yourself, what if, what if, what if, what if? The grass is greener on the other side. If you are fortunate enough to land a job with a celebrity, high-profile family, or billionaire, appreciate it. It's always going to be busy. You're always going to feel like you're not making enough money, but it usually isn't any better at other jobs. Many people I know left great jobs and regretted it. Literally, at least once a year, I get an email from somebody from somewhere in the world, and they're all depressed, and they're working for some high-profile celebrity or billionaire, and they're like, I'm working all these hours, and I don't feel like I'm making enough money, and I want to quit. And then I'll send them a message back, and I say, how much you making? And it's something crazy, like 150,000 or 250,000. I got an email from a guy once. This is my favorite example. He was working for a billionaire on the private island. The billionaire on a private island. And he's like, oh, I feel so stressed out, and I'm only making 250,000 a year. And I said, listen, man, shut up. Just listen to me and shut up. You don't quit. I'm telling you, you're crazy. See, because what happens is when I get these emails, I go and I'll look at their LinkedIn profile. They got lucky. They haven't been in the game for a long time, so they don't know how lucky they were to be in that. Because normally, if you want to work for a respected high-profile billionaire, and you're on their private island, you're making $250, and that's net, by the way. You're keeping $250 because everything else is paid for. It takes 20 years to build yourself and to be in that position to do that. So when something like that is just handed to you, you don't appreciate it. And most people, frankly, they'll blow it because they don't have the skills and the discipline and the appreciation to go the extra mile and be able to hang on to it. And then for the rest of their lives, they're trying to put themselves in another similar situation, and it's just not going to happen. Have a strong network. Now it's easier to connect with other professionals. Grow on LinkedIn, join clubs, associations, and coalitions, get training, go out of your comfort zone, and be doing professional development all the time. When I was in the game full-time 20 years ago, we did not have all these resources. We were every day it felt like being stranded on a deserted island, and you just were always struggling. Now it's much, much, much easier. Okay, that concludes this presentation. This is my book, which I give away for free on my website, findcelebrityjobs.com/book. And I encourage you also to look tons and tons of free resources. There is no website or resource anywhere in the world as robust as what we are offering. In fact, I would even argue the companies that are out there that are charging for resources and are invite only, and you have to know all these people and fill out the application, I still have better resources, in my opinion. Go to the site map, join our newsletter, and of course, you can check our jobs page. Rock and roll. This is Brian Daniel with the Celebrity PA Network staffing agency, which is located online at findcelebrityjobs.com. Wherever you're at, knock 'em dead and rock and roll.